Okay, so as you can see over here, we talk about the synergies of mergers and acquisition, but then in many instances they have met with disaster. And one such example is that of America Online and Time Warner. In the year 2000, one of the biggest merger in history happened when America Online joined hands with Time Warner, which was an internet provider, and Time Warner was the entertainment conglomerate, and they together created AOL Time Warner. And this was a deal worth 165 US billion dollars, one of the landmark deals in the field of mergers and acquisition. But then the merger did not succeed. One of the primary reason is that the way people started accessing internet changed, and America Online, which had the fixed line internet access model, did not find favor with the consumers. So mergers and acquisition do not always result into success, and therefore what it requires is a lot of investigation, seeking information, and therefore there is a procedure for evaluating the decision for mergers and acquisition. So let us understand how it goes. So planning of acquisition requires analysis of what you call as the firm specific information along with industry related information. So the acquiring firm should review the objectives of acquisition. It should have an assessment of its own strength and weakness and the corporate goal. In addition to that, it will acquire industry data about the market growth for the specific product lines that it is into it, what is the extent of competition, who are the competitors, and whether there is a restriction in terms of entry into a new business, or there are favorable situation for entry into a national boundary with the merger or acquisition route. Then what is the capital and labor intensity required in a given line of business in which it wants to enter through the process of mergers and acquisition, and what is the regulatory or the legislative framework surrounding such merger or acquisition exercise. So the first step is what you call as planning. So this planning helps the company to identify the product market strategies appropriate for it, and it can also identify the business unit that should either be dropped or added. So you will need information about the quality of management, market size, market share, capital structure, profitability, and production and the marketing capabilities of the target firm that you are looking at for the purpose of merger or acquisition. And this search and screening, which is the second part, we started with planning, now we have moved to search and screening. And the search focuses on how and where to look for the suitable candidates for acquisition. In the screening process, we identify few candidates, we shortlist on these candidates from the many available, and then we try to obtain detailed information about each one of them. And this process of searching for information is known as the process of due diligence. And this is going to be our focus in the next part of our deliberation. So in layman terms, it is the effort made by an ordinarily prudent or a reasonable party to avoid harm to another party or to himself. And this term is used for number of concepts involving either the performance of an investigation of a business or sorry person, or the performance of any act which could be merger or acquisition. If you talk about finance, due diligence is the process of research and analysis that take place in advance of an acquisition, investment, business partnership, or a bank loan in order to determine the value of the subject of the due diligence or to see if there are any skeletons in the closet. If you talk about the banking industry, it refers to the reasonability of bank directors and officers to act in a prudent manner in evaluating the credit applications. If you talk about the securities market, then it refers to responsibility of the underwriters to explain the details of the new securities to all the interested purchasers. Okay. Simply put, it is the effort made by an ordinary, prudent, or reasonable party to avoid harm to another party or to himself. We have already discussed about how it is defined in terms of banking industry and other such context. So one should know exactly what one is getting into, what needs to be fixed, how to fix it, what is the cost involved, and if the company in this instant case is the right company to take on the business. So you would require investigation and evaluation of the management team's characteristic, the investment philosophy, terms and conditions before you commit your capital. So remember, due diligence goes beyond the financial analysis. We saw the financial valuation exercise earlier, and it is also different from audit because audit is concerned with the truth and fairness of historical financial statements, whereas in due diligence we not only look at the present status, we also take cognizance of what happened in the past and look forward to what are the benefits and cash flows that will come up in future. So therefore the scope of due diligence review is wider, much wider than audit. We are looking at historical figures, we are looking at sustainability, we are looking at competition and many other aspects including the legal and the technology aspects. So in the light of these, the investigator will typically either withdraw from the deal based on the information collected through the process of due diligence or adjust the valuation of the investment, or if there are any problems that are encountered, that can be sorted out and fixed. So again, when we talk about the information, specifically these are information related to historical financial data, current financial data, the forecast of the financial information based on the future cash flows that will happen, and how they are integrated to the business plan that the company has for future. It also dwells into the minutes of directors meeting and management meetings to understand the philosophy and the vision of the founders and the top management, and it also looks at the audit of some of the financial statements and other papers which are related to the deal under consideration by the merger or acquisition, and then it will also contact the suppliers and customer and staff and also look into the contracts which this target company has with these entities, and also go to the financiers and debtors also to seek more and more information. So now let us be very specific and let us identify as to what are the significant information that is required. So let us start one by one, and here I would request all of you to please write it down. I may share the content, but I would suggest that you write down what I am discussing now. So, looking at the financial matter, let us see what are some of the specific questions. As we mentioned earlier, target companies' historical financial statements and other related financial metrics will have to be seen, and some specific topic of inquiry will include: number one, please write down what do the company's annual, quarterly, and in some cases it depends from one nation to another, monthly financial statements for the last 3 years reveal about the financial performance and financial condition. Number two, are the company's financial statements audited? If so, For how long? Do the financial statements and related notes set forth all liabilities of the company, both the current liabilities as well as the contingent liabilities? What are the margins for the business? Are they growing or deteriorating? What are the company's projections for the future, and what are the underlying assumptions? Are they reasonable and believable? Because if I am going to sell my company, I am going to talk about all the strengths of the company and undermine the weakness of the company. So therefore, you need to be careful about what are the projections. How do the companies projection for the current year compared to the board approved budget for the same period? What are the normalized working capital necessary to continue running this business? So, these are some of the issues that you need to look at. Then we come over to the adequateness of the working capital, that is the amount of the current asset net of the current liabilities. So we will see number one. Again, please write down, how is working capital determined for the purpose of the acquisition agreement? So, you will have to look at all the items from the balance sheet that both sides agree to be excluded from the current asset. For example, whether cash is included or excluded, loan due from owners, whether that is included or not. Then what are the things that are typically excluded from the current liability? So what about bank debt and tax payable? Have they taken note of this? Do they reflect it in the working capital projection that they have given? So these accounts are normally excluded from the adjustment calculations and also from the transaction. And these kind of accounts and are normally retained by the seller. It is the seller's, you know, liability to take cognizance of all the pending loans and taxes and other such things. Then the next issue that you need to look at is, what are the capital expenditures and other investments which will be needed to make the business grow, and also look at the company's current capital requirement. So in terms of accounting, the expense is considered to be a capital expenditure when the asset is a newly purchased capital asset or an investment that improves the useful life on existing capital asset. So if the expense is a capital expenditure, it needs to be capitalized, which means the company requires to spread the cost of the expenditure, which is a fixed cost, over the useful life of the asset. Then what is the condition of the assets? So, and then you have lien. So those of you who are specializing in finance, a lien is the legal right granted by the owner of a property by law or otherwise acquired by a creditor. So a lien serves to guarantee an underlying obligation such as the repayment of a loan. So if the underlying obligation is not satisfied, the creditor may be able to seize the asset. That is the subject of the lien. So identify what is the condition of asset and if there are any liens involved in these assets. Then what are the outstanding debts and guarantees by the company? What are the terms and when it has to be repaid? So liabilities is another area which has to be the focus. Then you need to see if there are any unusual revenue recognition issues for the company or the industry in which it is operating. What is the age of the account receivable? Are there any accounts receivable issues? Basically, you need to look at the report which will list all the unpaid customer invoices and unused credit memo, and look at the date range. Okay. then you need to see if the capital and operating budgets appropriate, or if there are necessary capital expenditure that have been deferred, because that could mean that the company was looking for exit from the business for quite some time, and therefore you need to look further into this particular target company, whether it is the right move to actually go for merger or acquisition. So you again need to ask if the company has sufficient financial resources to both continue operating in the ordinary course and cover the transaction expenses between the time of diligence and the anticipated closing date of the acquisition. You remember we saw earlier that one deal started in 2015, and finally it was the agreement could be signed only in 2017. Similarly, if you look at this particular deal of Snyder and L&T, again it involved a long process. So during this process of due diligence and negotiation, will this company able to survive with the current financial resources, and or is there an intent to make false projections and sell the company, and not invest enough to ensure that the acquiring firm gets the company in the state of financial health. So these are some of the issues related to what you call as the financial part of the due diligence. But then there is another part which we call as the technology or the intellectual property, and in today's business this has assumed a lot of importance. I keep emphasizing on the technology part because you will find that much of the business is happening through the new technology and through a disruptive technology. So, the extent and the quality of the target company's technology and other intellectual property, including the designs, including the software, including the aspect of cyber security, including the aspect of copyrights. So everything has to be accounted for. And let us see it further. So, what are the domestic and foreign patents? Are there any patents pending? What is the situation? Incidentally, Huawei is the leading patent company in the world. And if you look at the top 10 companies with patent filing, you will find that three of them belong to China. So, China has of late emerged as a big force in terms of technology, business, and intellectual property.
Ma'am, actually,
Yeah.
the actual topic because there has been a continuous dispute between America and China for fake claims for intellectual property. So,
Yes.
just asking for intellectual
See, there are
property.
two things. There are two things. One is that you file for patent. Okay. So filing of patent and grant of patent. These are two different things. Not every patent that is filed is granted the patent. Okay. So there is a due process. Even there is a due diligence that goes into it. And you look for novelty and you look for usefulness. Okay. So when you talk about novelty, that is where the so-called reasonability and authenticity of the claim is checked, and therefore we can also say that to some extent the trade war between US and China is more of rhetoric and more of an effort to show dominance on part of United States of America, because it is also losing its dominance in technology space. And the other thing that you will also have to acknowledge simultaneously is that America also charges China that even when there is a collaboration or a joint venture between the Chinese and the US entity, the Chinese company try to usurp the technology completely, and does not have due recognition for the fundamental respect that is part and parcel of any strategic alliance, particularly in the technology frames. So, to some extent, America is justified in its argument, but at the same time, you need to acknowledge that the number of papers, research papers which are coming from the Chinese is maximum. So, give some recognition to the Chinese focus on research, development, and new technology. Okay? I hope I have been able to answer your question.
Kind of.
Okay.
I'm not 100%ly
Yeah, so you have any
that, but
counter arguments? So please let me know so that we can have something to add.
is
Yeah. So we were talking about the patents. So what are the domestic and foreign patents, and to what extent the patents are pending? Then the next thing is, has the company taken appropriate measures to protect the intellectual property? So, are there confidentiality and invention assignment agreements with the current and former employees and consultants? See, basically, who owns the patent, who owns the copyright, who owns the design. So, that again is a matter of agreement. So, there may be employees who have developed a technology and they may move out of the organization. So, typically, in a multinational organization, in such instances, there is a confidentiality and invention assignment agreement. And so, you need to check what is the current status, who owns the right. Okay, so are there any material exception from such assignment, that is the rights which are preserved by the employees and the consultant? What are the registered and common law trademark and service marks available with the company? And what are the copyrighted products and the material available by the company, available with the company? To what extent they use and control these copyrights? Different nations may have different copyright systems, so you need to be particular about the extent of the ownership of the copyrights. Does the company's business depend on the maintenance of any kind of trade secret? And if that is the case, what are the steps taken by the company to preserve the secrecy of this trade secret? Because sometimes it is what you call as the core competency of the company, which is the target. Then you also need to ensure that this company is not under any kind of legal suit for infringement of the intellectual property rights of another third party. And if there are any third party infringing on the intellectual property of this particular company, you can also note down the term copyright infringement is the use of work which is protected by copyright law without permission, infringing certain exclusive rights which are granted to the copyright holder, such as the right to reproduce, distribute, display, or perform the protected work, or to make any kind of derivative or related work. Suppose we are talking about mergers or acquisition related to a broadcast company or an entertainment company whose forte is the software or the content that it develops. So then copyright becomes one of the most important intellectual property for the company. Similarly, you will ask the question whether the company is involved in any kind of intellectual property dispute, and if there are any offer to license or uh, demand third party, that is the acquiring firm, the target firm, and then there could be X number of other parties with which the target company may have its own agreement and arrangement and act with reference to any of the intellectual property. So it is important to take cognizance of all such contracts and commitments of the target company. Now, here is an example of an IP issue. So, in 1998, Volkswagen purchased the automobile assets of Rolls-Royce Motor Cars, and they paid 790 million US dollars. And the physical asset of the Rolls-Royce company was estimated at 250 million US dollar. Remember, I mentioned earlier that a premium of 30 to 100% is the purchase of the company on the market value of the firm. Now here you can see that the physical asset value is only $250 million, but it paid 790 million US dollars. But then what was the mistake? It did not see that the trademark right of Rolls Royce were not part of the license, was not part of the deal. So Volkswagen had the plant, the machinery and design, but it could not use the prestigious Rolls-Royce brand name. On the other hand, BMW later acquired the trademark right by paying just 65 million US dollars. So this 65 million US dollar was added to 790 million US dollar, and the brand name, the trademark stayed with Volkswagen. One can assume the kind of advantages that it would have, which it did not capitalize through the deal. And the later on, there was a major gain for BMW, which could not be capitalized by Volkswagen. So IP issues are very important. Again, we have example of another IP issue, Skype, and they paid 2.6 billion US dollar, and they just sold it for 1.9 billion US dollar after 4 years, because they were not able to come up with the technical integration, and customers had lot of expectation. And in the meantime, there were many other what you call as the video conferencing tools which came up. So the synergies were not realized, and the expectations of the buyers and sellers were not met, and therefore it did not become popular. So sometimes you overvalue the IPR, sometimes you undervalue the IPR, sometimes you miss on the crucial IPRs. Okay, so therefore IPR issues are very important. So from other than the general corporate matter, financial, accounting and tax aspects which we discussed earlier, technology and intellectual property are another facet of the process which we need to focus on. But taking the technology and intellectual property further, let's talk about the criticality of the IPRs. So there are agreements whereby an owner of the technological IPR, that is the licensor, allows another party, that is the licensee, to use, modify or resell that property in exchange for a consideration. So this this consideration or the compensation could be in the form of a lump sum royalty, or it could be based on the volume of production, which we call as the running royalty, or right to use licensee technology. Through licensing of the proprietary technology, small firms also earn substantive income from the market. So you have to look whether any such deals are already existing, and whether the target company can have ownership of these technologies, and is devoid of any kind of legal risk of by any of these parties. Some noise is coming again and again,
Excuse
so
me,
I
ma'am.
request all of you to mute. Yeah, Vikas.
Ma'am, it's me, Tushar. Ma'am, actually, Vikas' mic is on, so please ask him to off.
Yeah, so Vikas, please
Yeah.
switch off your, please mute yourself. Okay. Now
Some more
coming to the
vertical idea.
software part. Yeah. Now coming to the software part, which are the softwares which are critical to the company's operation? Does the company have appropriate licenses for those softwares? Are there any other kind of intellectual property issues which are under litigation by this target company? Okay, so this was about the technology and the intellectual property. Now we move to the next one, which is the product and the service offering, including sales, marketing, and customers. So if you look at our consumers or the buyers for the product, again, we are referring to the target company's products that are offered. So the buyer for the target company's product. So what is the consumer base? What is the level of concentration of the largest consumers to this particular business? Who are the top 20 customers? How much revenue is coming from them? And what is the extent to which customer concentration issues are there? So suppose those customers leave and go to some other company, how is it going to make an impact on the future cash flows of our company? Will there be any issue in keeping customers after the acquisition in terms of uh, you know the warranties that were there in place before the deal was actually finalized? What is the existing customer relationship and level of satisfaction and loyalty? Are there any warranty issues which we discussed? What is the customer backlog in terms of servicing the requirement of the customer? For example, we have acquired a company which is into execution of projects. Okay, so there is a possibility that there is a cost and time overrun, and the project is not completed in time, and already the target company has given an estimate as to when the project will be completed, but by the time the deal is stuck, the project is still on. So this is nothing but the case of a customer backlog. So is there any customer backlog? What are the sales terms, policies, and is there any unusual level of refunds? Refund could mean that the quality of the product is question mark. How are the salespeople compensated? What is the motivational plan for such salespeople? And what will be the impact of this deal on this kind of incentive system? If there are any seasonality in revenue and working capital requirement, so what has been the company's requirement, and of course the strategic fit with the buyer. So the buyer is concerned not only with the likely future performance of the target company as a standalone business, but this company, that is our company, which is making a thorough study of the target company, will also want to understand the extent to which the company will fit strategically within the larger buyer organization, that is our organization. So does the company provide products, services, or technology that the buyer doesn't have? Obviously, that is one of the motive for us, the buyer, to get into the business of due diligence. What integration will be required once the deal is struck? So what are the different levels of integration in process and other things? And what are the marginal cost which might be generated by the acquisition? And what are the revenue enhancements coming from the products and the services which are part and parcel of the company that we target for the uh, company? So again, going back to the material contract, so let us also have a look at some of the contracts which are important. So please note down. So you need to look at guarantees, loan, and the credit agreement. You need to look at the customer and supplier contracts. You need to see the agreement of partnership or joint venture with other parties. Then you need to look at the contracts involving payments over some material amount which has not been paid. You need to look at the post acquisition agreements with some of the other entities such as your suppliers. Then if there are any equipment, so if there is any lien or lease agreement with respect to those vital equipments, and then are there any kind of agreements with the employees, is there any kind of exclusivity agreements with respect to specific buyers or with respect to certain suppliers? So, all of these, then you have to look at the real estate lease or the purchase agreement. You need to look at the license agreements. You need to see if the business is owned by the company or is it functioning under some kind of power of attorney. If there are any franchise agreement, if there is any other kind of distribution or dealer or sales agency agreement. So there is a series of material contract that you need to look at. So this process is actually very, very complex, but we will discuss about it in the next class. We will continue. I will provide you with the material related to due diligence. Thank you for your patience, and we will continue with our discussion in the next.